The interview I want to show you now was recorded back in February of this year. It took me almost 8 months to find the strength to edit and release it. This is probably the most powerful interview I've ever recorded in Ukraine. I met the person you're about to hear from at a cafe. After my usual morning recording session, I went to my favorite little coffee spot. There sat a kind-looking young man of average height, wearing a Ukrainian army uniform, but with British patches. I joined him at his table, we started talking, and I invited him to do an interview. At that moment, I thought it would be a typical story of a foreigner fighting for the Ukrainian armed forces. I don't know why, but a few hours later we both walked away completely drained, and I didn't touch the footage for 8 months. Still, it's worth watching.
Daniel Stephen William Fletcher, originally from the north of England, Great Britain. Formerly a humanitarian volunteer here, and now serving in the ZSU in the International Legion 2nd Battalion, Alpha Company. And remarkably nervous about a simple interview. Who would have thought?
As is often the case with the British, he had a double name, Stephen William Fletcher. However, he introduced himself as Liam. I asked my guest who he was before the war and how he ended up wearing a military uniform.
Before the war, nothing. Yeah. I had experience of helping clean up and deliver supplies and assist in the rebuilding efforts after natural disasters, earthquakes, landslides, mudslides, all the good stuff in Indonesia, volcanoes. So I knew what death and disaster smelled like, but war is obviously in retrospect, I was unprepared for the brutality and savagery of war, because this is man-made disaster. It's malevolence. It's man-made malice. It's different to natural phenomenon.
The Russian Federation makes enormous propaganda efforts to discredit these people, volunteers who come to fight for Ukraine's freedom, portraying them as mercenaries, as people without honor or conscience, who are only in it for the money. So, fully understanding how absurd that narrative is, I still asked him how much he earns fighting for Ukraine.
$2,600.
$2,000 a month.
$2,600.
Less than $3,000 a month.
No, you could go back to England and work in a Tesco or a big supermarket chain and get more money than that. Just working, menial jobs, minimum wage, you get higher in Britain, and I imagine in America too.
And then, quite obviously, it was time to ask probably the most important question of this interview. What is he fighting for? What is he risking his life for? What was he wounded for, lost his health for, which he'll talk about a bit later? Why is he here?
We're fighting against an enemy who lived by a totalitarian modus vivendi, a totalitarian system, a police state with all its terrors and horrors, all the old ancient evils and ills. And we're supposedly fighting for pluralism and internationalism and democratic values and peaceful prosperity. Some people like me believe in it, and we fight for ideological reasons because of the historical suppression and subjugation of the Ukrainian people and the crimes that Russia has committed. So even, just going back 100 years, for crushing of the Western Ukrainian Republic and the anarchist republic and collectivization and the Holodomor and the purges for Gulag Archipelago.
After listening to his speech about fighting for democracy and peaceful prosperity, I asked him how he feels about the Ukrainians, his age, younger or older, whom he sees every day on the streets of Kharkiv or Kyiv, not in uniform, not fighting for their country, while he, Stephen William Fletcher, born in the United Kingdom with no ties to Ukraine, came here to defend it.
And when I see Ukrainian youngsters or even people in their late 20s, early 30s, men who aren't, okay, yeah, maybe cheaply, I do occasionally have these sort of prickly feelings of resentment, like, oh, you're enjoying yourself getting drunk in the centre of Kharkiv while the older boys are dying in the mud and blood just so that you can enjoy and you're, making loads of loud, braggadocious noise, getting boisterous, drunkenly babbling with your arm around a pretty girl who looks at me with ice-cold contempt in her eyes. So yeah, my hackles raise a little bit, but I try and combat those feelings in myself because it probably wouldn't be very moral to force people to fight if they were incapable of operating effectively in a violent and dangerous environment.
Liam went on to share that he has been awarded 2 medals, one of which he currently wears and the other he is yet to receive. A medal for being wounded. So naturally I asked under what circumstances he was injured.
Yeah, they found I fought for 2 months undiagnosed, and they, when I was taken off rotation because of my obvious impediments, my loss of vision, the narrowness of my visual field, my platoon commander took me off rotation, and I tried to leave with the intention of being treated in England and returning to the fray. Excuse me. And instead, I was diagnosed in the Kharkiv military hospital, or sent to a clinic for an MRT, and they discovered bleeding around the left parietal lobe, as well as diffuse axonal damage and damage to the cerebral cortex.
Under which circumstances have you been wounded, if you can share?
A 120mm mortar. I was building a forward position. We were already in Serebryansky Lis Chudes, the Forest of Wonders, as the Ukrainians nickname it. Our defence line in the easternmost sector of the easternmost region of the country, in Luhansk region. We were southwest of Kreminna, and we were 68 metres away from the Russian lines, as calculated from our drone reconnaissance. The distance was 68 metres, and then we built new forward positions, myself, my team leader, and our Georgian sniper, Dato. And I think we built another 30 metres forward. So we were roughly 35 to 40 metres away from the enemy lines in the new forward position and the open trench that led there. They tried to infiltrate quite often because of the absurd distance. I suppose the rationale was Stalingrad tactics. You get as close as you can to the enemy and then they can't hit you with the big guns. But, well, they draw parallels between the orcs of Mordor and the Russian army for a reason, mainly brutality and stupidity. It's a very pregnant term, calling them orcs. We still got hit with everything from magnesium thermite to constant shelling, artillery and mortar barrages, grads. We were hit with grad, multiple launch rocket systems, magnesium thermite, which is evil stuff and burns through practically anything. They use white phosphorus too, but I never personally saw that or experienced it. But magnesium thermite, much the same. Evil science. And yeah, the Russians will, even if we're 35 to 68 metres away from their own forward positions, the Russians will happily, quite gladly bomb their own men just to get us. Yeah, they certainly bombed their own positions just because of the obscene closeness, the obscene proximity of their positions to ours. And sadly, it made it all the more enticing for them to try and infiltrate during the night, nocturnal infiltrations, and, duck walking across 35, 40 metres of no man's minefield towards us. And some of their Spetsnaz units have thermal-resistant ponchos. So you'll see part of a face or a head and a pair of boots duck walking towards you. It's quite sinister.
Next, I asked Liam about fear. Had he ever felt afraid? What does that feel like, and how can one overcome it?
It was very exhilarating the first time I went to the front as a legionnaire, as a soldier in uniform, as a member of the armed forces, with a gun on my lap and grenades in the pouch and vest and helmet, and, we're in a truck being driven over the border from the northern part of Donetsk region, from the Liman area, over the border and then into Luhansk region. You're in the easternmost part of the Donbass, the easternmost region in Ukraine, and it's very different when you go to zero line. I was full of nervous anticipation, waiting for the truck, strapping the armour on, filling your pouches, filling up your magazines with bullets, filling your pouches, getting all your gear and equipment in order, and then waiting for the truck, getting into the truck. There's enemy drones overhead, and you know that even if they're not dropper drones, there's no grenades coming at you, or if they're not kamikaze drones, they've still surveilled you. So as sure as night follows day, you've got the artillery and mortars, the indirect fire coming in, because the drones have spotted you, and you have to spread out so that one shell cannot take out an entire team, and then you're very mindful of the fact that the Russians have turned eastern Ukraine into the world's largest minefield, and that's scary, knowing that you can step on a mine at any given moment. And in this particular sector where I first went out, Liman, Kremina front, Serebryansky forest, the Forest of Wonders, as Ukrainian soldiers call it, Lis Chudes, Serebryansky Lis, southwest of Kremina. It's scary knowing that there's mines all over the place. And here's the thing, many years and decades from now, there are still unborn victims of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the Russo-Ukrainian war. Not every victim of this war has been born yet. And that's terrifying. The world's largest minefield. There's going to be children stepping on those mines for decades.
You've probably noticed that throughout this interview, Liam has a hard time staying focused on the question at hand. That's part of his medical condition. He often drifts off onto other topics. So I bring him back once again to where we started. Under what circumstances was he wounded?
It was strange, because that was a strange day. We had the previous 3 days in my particular position. I told you that we built a forward position, but even from the position, I can't really call it a back position when it's still 68 metres from the nearest, from the enemy lines. But in both parts of that position, if we call it one, we were getting a lot of action in that sector. We were getting hit with RPGs a lot. We were getting sprayed with a PKM, a machine gun. There were lots of drones. On this particular day, we have a fight where they're attacking us. And then myself, my team leader at the time, and my Georgian brother, a guy called Dato, who's a sniper, we go down to repair and... the forward position hasn't even been built yet. We've not even, we've dragged a few logs down there, but there's no overhead cover. It's all just open trench. My brother is standing watch for us while me and my team leader are digging. They must have spent a fortune trying to kill us that day. Between PKM fire, the machine gun, between just regular Kalashnikov fire, trying to hit us with RPGs every now and again, the drones. And then it must have been about 20 past 4, going on for 4:30. So there's only 10 or 15 minutes of daylight left in the day. And this is kind of what's strange about the whole situation. We only had to survive for another 15 minutes or so, and then darkness descends, and we were due to be extracted late the next morning. So we're digging, and I'm facing west. So the Russians are to my right. So obviously I'm prioritising the embankment of this trench that we're digging leading to where we built the new position. I'm prioritising building that up to 7.5 feet, so that even the tallest among us can walk down the open trench to the new position without having to worry about marksmen picking them off. And it's for our protection too while we're building it. So dig, earth to the right, earth to the right, dig, earth to the right. I built it up 7.5 feet high. The embankment on my left was piddling, it was not quite head high. 5.5 feet maybe. And with 10 minutes to go, there was a little bit of a lull. There's no one trying to pick us off anymore. There's no kamikaze drones. There was a regular Mavic or surveillance drone that went overhead and didn't drop anything, just surveilling. And, well, the saying, keep your powder dry, from Oliver Cromwell. Maybe our powder should have been a bit drier, but you get so used to the sky being full of drones that when one isn't dropping grenades on you or dive bombing you, you just kind of, it becomes part and parcel of a normal working day. But they surveilled us, and then obviously the artillery and mortar team have got a precise lock on where we are, and just one 120mm shell comes up. And they say that you don't hear the one that hits you, and it's a lie. It's a complete fabrication, because we heard it. It was a whoo, but as it came to us, it was a direct strike almost on me. My friend Dato was maybe 15 to 20, maybe 15 metres down the trench that way, and my team leader was a quick zigzag away, just out of sight, but again 15 to 20 metres away. And so essentially it's landed right on me, and it goes over our heads, and never mind you don't hear the one that hits you. The whistle became a scream. Boom. Next thing I know, I'm sat up with my feet poking back towards our lines, with my back against the trench with the Russians to my back. And I'm thinking, well, I'm not entirely sure I was thinking at the time, but I remember touching my face, and I could feel the right side of my face, but then all the left side of my face and head was numb. And I put my hand to my ear, it came away with blood, and I'm, stupefied, blinking stupidly, and I don't think I spoke. I just remember being nonplussed and my hand coming away bloody, and then I've put my finger in my ear and I've got a red finger. The entire left side of my face and head was numb. And I remember looking, and I had to twist my body because I wasn't seeing out of the left side of my head anymore. Monocular now. So I had to twist my whole body and look out my right eye, which was, blurry, but still a functional eyeball. And my friend Dato was maybe 15 metres away, maybe 20, maybe something like that. And he was sat up and he was kind of looking at me wild-eyed. He goes like that. And almost in slow motion, like I'm stuck in quick mud or something, trying to run through a quagmire. I remember kind of just, blinking and trying to clear my head and probably pulling all kinds of stupid expressions. I should have known better before trying to reenact it just now. I probably look quite silly now. But, everything slowed down. I've got a ringing in my ears. Couldn't really hear out of this side. Got ringing in this ear. Blood in the ear. I've got blood on my hand, and in slow mo, I kind of got my wherewithal, and I'm looking at Dato and he's saying, Fletch, dobre. And then I realise, he's got both his thumbs, his arms are outstretched. He doesn't look I couldn't see any blood on him. Didn't seem to have been hit with shrapnel. And then I should have probably checked myself for shrapnel, but I don't know. It could have been 3 minutes. It could have been 12 seconds. I don't know. But at some point, Dato has put his thumbs down and he said, Moise. And he's the call sign of my team leader. So the shell has obviously landed right on me. I'm right in the kill range. All the shrapnel has missed because of the piddling little embankment of mud. But the shockwave has gone through the mud and I've just taken the blast wave, the shockwave at point blank radius, but all the shrapnel has missed me.
After that very detailed account of the battle, I asked my guest whether his generation in the West, would be capable of fighting the way he did if Russia were to attack NATO countries.
I've been criticised for sneering at my fellow Brits for all their so-called problems, as I put it. But equally, a lot of them don't know they're born. And yeah, at some point they might be jolted out of their slumber and their complacency by the monster roar of missiles and mortars and machine guns and all the good stuff. And we're going to have to. It'll be an existential struggle. It'll be a war for cultural survival, much like this war. The Russo-Ukrainian war is an existential struggle for Ukrainian culture. I don't want to be too pessimistic, but all their perceived problems, when you look at what's happening here in the abattoir, the slaughterhouse of the East, and what I've seen in disasters in poverty-stricken societies, I don't know. I don't think that young Brits and young Americans are really built for it. I think Russia might steamroll over us in a matter of weeks. Yeah, unlike Ukraine, at least the NATO alliance would have an advantage in firepower and a superior arsenal. Well, in all but nuclear weapons, Russia has the largest stockpile of doomsday weaponry. They've got the largest supply of thermonuclear warheads. We need to toughen up in a hurry. Soft times create soft people, and soft people create hard times. And I don't know if my generation, and certainly Generation Z, the one below me, the iGen, I don't know if enough of them would have the requisite toughness and mental robustness and fortitude to sacrifice and suffer in order to resist a powerful and sadistically brutal enemy. I don't think we would have the toughness.
I asked whether Ukrainians should continue this bloody carnage or agree to the terms put forward by Russia, by Putin. What is his assessment of this? Arguably the most crucial, most important question: capitulate or continue the war?
But again, it's not for me to sacrifice other people's lives like they're pawns on a chessboard. It's a slaughterhouse, it's an abattoir in the East. And while I would love nothing more than to see Putin and all his cronies and all his soldiers, every last one of them, I would love to see Russia cease to exist as a state. I think they're always going to be a menace with their xenophobia and their barbarism and the extreme cruelty that has always existed there. Serfdom was a thing in Russia until, 1831?
1861.
1861.
Yep.
And then everything that followed thereafter was just as brutal.
Certainly.
In between the two world wars, one of the bloodiest civil wars in recorded history, with widespread barbarism and savagery, and the crushing of both Ukrainian republics simultaneously. And then thereafter, the horrors of Stalinism and the Gulag Archipelago and the Holodomor, a despicable genocide, a deliberate famine. And just the cruelty that's been ingrained in their culture, part and parcel of their cultural life throughout Russian history, and the violence of their invasions, what they did to the Kazakhs and the Kyrgyz and the Tajiks and the Uzbeks, the brutality of the way that they conquered all those peoples in what's now what we call the Central Asian republics. And when the British and the French were surrendering their colonies after World War II, well, maybe not the French, they had to be booted out of Indochina, but, there was a process of decolonisation, and particularly the British were granting independence left and right. It was a new dawn and a new day, like the Nina Simone song. Did Russia, in the course of the whole history of the Soviet Union, did Russia ever surrender territory that it had conquered? Did Lenin ever give back any of the Tsar's imperial conquests? Never. Never. Once a Russian... It's almost like the Russian version of jihad or holy war. Russification. Russian supremacy. Russism. Once a Russian boot has set foot on foreign soil, that land, to the Russist mentality, becomes Russia ad aeternum, evermore, forever Russian. And the brutality with which they conquered all those disparate peoples and cultures, the Dagestanis, the Chechens, the Ukrainians, the Uzbeks, the Tajiks, the Kyrgyz, the Turkmen, down as far as Afghanistan, because they were obviously intending to march on India and kick the Brits out of India. They wanted to extend the Tsar's possessions in the 19th century all the way down to the Indian Ocean. Russia has been on a quest for global conquest for centuries, if you examine their history. And if you listen to the bold, naked language that their Tsars and Soviet emperors and Putin thereafter, the same naked, bold language of the conqueror has always been employed. They've never hidden what they are and what their expansionist goals are. And while the Western world has been liberalising and the British and the French have been surrendering their colonies for the past 100 or so years, Russia has only ever been seeking to expand, everywhere and always.
As the devil's advocate, I put forward the argument so heavily pushed by Russian propagandists that they are peaceful people who have no intention of attacking anyone and are merely defending themselves from NATO. I asked my interlocutor for his reaction to this viewpoint.
I've never met people who hate Russia more than my dearest friends and comrades who speak Russian and communicate in Russian as a first language. And this is very telling. Just moving away from all my Georgian brothers and, Belarusian brothers and sisters and people I've fought with, just in Kharkiv, which is a border town, you're Kharkivchanian, it's a Russian-speaking town and oblast. But all my friends who are younger than me, who are under the age of 30, or many of them under the age of 25, all their poems, all their songs, all their live theatrical performances were all in the Ukrainian language. They have Russian-speaking parents, and they've grown up communicating in Russian with each other. They've grown up communicating in Russian. And now they answer their Russian-speaking parents back in Ukrainian.
Since he is 35 years old and unmarried with no girlfriend in England, I asked whether he has any romantic relationship or attachment, a girlfriend, here in Ukraine.
Since the Krovoi Slianya, what little I learned in the way of, conversational niceties, clearly that was all stored in the the short-term memory part of my brain, wherever memory is physically housed in the neural warehouse, that part was bombarded and blasted. But strangely enough, long-term memory survived. So even after I was wounded, I could communicate with Colombians in Spanish at Zero Line. I could go to Charlie Company, but everything that I'd learned over the previous year and a half, I suddenly couldn't remember. I'm trying to speak to people in Srdčik or Harkovsky or Donbassky, and I was freezing. So my short-term memory is gone, but I can still summon conversational Spanish from 15 years ago.
The loss of loved ones and friends. What are his feelings about that? Whom has he lost? How does a person, a frontline soldier, psychologically adapt to and rationalize the deaths of people close to him?
Masha's funeral, and she's worth a mention, Maria Zaitseeva, a Belarusian sister-in-arms. She was killed near Bakhmut on the Kramatorsk-Chasiv Yar front on her 24th birthday. And it's worth mentioning her because she was an icon of the Belarusian independence or Belarusian freedom movement. She was wounded by Lukashenko's pigs in 2020 when she was still a teenager. She was 19, and then she joined the International Legion. She was in the 2nd Battalion with me as a medic, and she told me she was a markswoman, marksminx, but I think primarily a medic, and maybe an infantry woman as well, an infantier. But all I know is she was killed on her 24th birthday on to the west of Bakhmut, on the Kramatorsk front, and that's never going to be all right. That's always going to be indigestible, because I mean, it's a little bit of a cliche to say the light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, but she did burn very brightly. She put something real behind her words, and she never knew the freedoms that so many people in the West take for granted. She spent her young life as a dissident against the Lukashenko regime, and then she died here defending Ukraine on her 24th birthday. So the brightest light extinguished in this dark corner of the human experiment. So her funeral is in a couple of days, and then after that I've been summoned back to base, but I've been reassured by my company commander that I'll get written permission to receive the ongoing treatment. It's not going to cost Ukraine anything because it was arranged by the World Health Organization. The British are funding it, but they deal with this particular program. I need written permission because it's outside Ukraine, but they deal with neuro-ocular problems. So they'll be able to treat both the loss of vision from optic nerve damage and vitreous damage, which is why I'm seeing these hallucinations. Spiders, but Ukrainian soldiers call them spiders, but I see them more as sort of molecular structures that move everywhere I look, and it's because the vitreous was destroyed in my eyes and I have optic nerve damage, and I'm monocular now. But Yasser, a very, very good man, a very decent person, he's the ambassador from the World Health Organization. So when I go back to base after Masha's funeral, I'm going to receive the Ukrainian Purple Heart, as it's nicknamed, or the wound medal for wounds.
An obvious question, is he returning to the front, and what awaits him in the future?
It depends on his treatment. If they can fix... I'm resigned to the fact that I'm always going to be monocular now. I knew what I was getting in for. It's a miracle that I survived being well within the kill radius of a 120mm mortar, but also took out two of my comrades and concussed them. They both had contusia, but they were both at least 15 metres either side of me. So they were 30 to 45 metres separate from each other, and they were both concussed by the shockwave blast. So I was well within the kill radius. And the fact that I kept fighting for another 6 weeks or so thereafter, and then, thereafter, I'm resigned to the being monocular henceforth. hopefully this treatment that I'm about to get written permission to receive, it's not going to cost Ukraine a penny. It's British and World Health Organization funded for soldiers with neuroocular problems. So either they can fix me and I'm not monocular, or they can maybe stop me seeing through my right eye all these spiders or these gigantic molecular structures that I see everywhere. Fingers and toes tightly crossed. And if not, well, I guess I just embark on a rehabilitation program and I heal and then get back to doing some volunteering. And a man needs a purpose.
So what is your purpose after the war?
Well, it depends how this treatment goes, but I'll find purpose again. Maybe I could be a warrior on the battleground of information. Because, as you say, Russia is very troublesome, very bothersome in the information sphere with their information terrorism in the digital world, upon which we now rely for our information. And the idea that they just pump out this daily tsunami of disinformation, the idea that can poison the minds and beliefs of impressionable young people and people old enough to know better, people who actually hold positions of influence, who wield influence in the real life material realm and could make a positive difference, but they get swayed by Russian information terrorism. Perhaps I could become a warrior on the battleground of information.
For me, and I don't know about you, it was an absolutely strange, almost surreal experience to see the war through the prism, through the eyes of a man who has lost one eye and suffered a severe concussion. It's completely clear that he has a strong post-traumatic stress disorder. He spoke a lot off-topic. Unfortunately, I had to cut out much from this interview. The full interview in English I will post on my Telegram channel for those who are interested. This is my attempt, through words, to show you what war, this terrible war, looks like through the eyes of a soldier. An ordinary soldier, not a Ukrainian, who came to save the world from the Russian fascist plague.